This evening begins our celebration of All Saints' Day. The saints are our brothers and sisters who lived a life of holiness while here on earth, striving to follow Jesus each day. And so the saints are now with the Lord in heaven. But that doesn't mean that they're far away from us, because they still very much care about our lives here on earth. They're praying for us, encouraging us to follow them in following Jesus. And so we're connected to them, especially when we're here at church when we celebrate the Mass. In the first reading tonight, St. John was given this vision of what was going on in heaven while we're still here on earth. And John says that I had a vision of a great multitude in which no one could count, from every nation, race, people, and tongue. So he's describing how he sees these many saints, more than he could count. And so when we're here at Mass, those countless angels and saints are also here with us, joining our voices too in the praise of God. And even though we can't see them visibly, that doesn't mean they're not here. They are. So our church buildings, the paintings, the statues, the stained glass, all of those things are trying to help us make visible to us what's invisible, including the presence of the saints. And so just like John saw that we're surrounded by a multitude of saints, so too that's what we try to show in our churches. So if we start looking around, we can see this. So we start with our two side altars. Right? We have the east side altar dedicated to our Blessed Mother, and the west one dedicated to our patron saint here, Saint Joseph. Right? Together with the two of them, and counting Jesus in the middle, who's in the tabernacle, we have the Holy Family. We see many churches that have that kind of setup with Mary and Joseph on one side, with Jesus in the middle, to bring a Holy Family. We also have the relief over here of the whole entire Holy Family there together. Our stained glass windows that we have here in our church don't have any images of saints in them themselves, as some churches might have saints in their stained glass windows. We have a number of other holy symbols in ours here. But stained glass windows are really meant to represent to us, to teach us about the saints. Because if you think about it, it's getting darker now, so you can't see all the beautiful colors through our stained glass windows as we normally would throughout the day. And it's the same way with the saints, is that when the saints allow the light of God's grace to shine through them, then suddenly they become filled with this beautiful variety within their lives. And so that's the same way with us. When God shines through us, then we become more saint-like. Stations of the cross that we have around our church also, they show the passion of Jesus primarily, but you can find a few saints in some of them. Like, for example, in station number 6, back there, we have Saint Veronica. The woman who isn't mentioned in the scriptures, but we know by tradition, came to Jesus' aid while he was on the way of the cross, offering the cloth to wipe his face and receiving back an image of his face upon it. On the other side over here, if we skip ahead to the 12th station, has a Blessed Mother Mary and St. John at the foot of the cross as Jesus dies. And then the 13th station, right after that, St. Mary Magdalene joins Mary and John after Jesus is taken down from the cross. In the sanctuary, we have a couple statues on either side of the tabernacle. The one over here on the east side is the Infant of Prague, which is not a saint, but it's actually Jesus. So that is the infant Jesus. But on the other side, we do have a saint, the young girl, Saint Maria Goretti. Maria Goretti was martyred at the age of 11, refusing to give in to the sins of her attacker, but instead prayed for him instead. We also have a statue of St. Isidore the Farmer out in the west entrance, as well as a medallion kind of in the back of the church there of St. Isidore the Farmer, patron saint for all of those who work the land. There's a framed picture also in the west area of a whole bunch of different saints. So if you look closely at that, you'll find a whole bunch of saints in there. As well as in the north entrance, we have a small statue of the apostles at the Last Supper. So we have a number of different images of the saints. One last set of saints that we have, if you go outside to our grotto for Our Lady of Fatima, they'll find that 2 out of the 3 children that Mary appeared to at that apparition, the brothers and sisters, Francisco and Jacinta Marto, were also canonized as saints in 2017. So all these saints should make us think of John's vision of heaven, where he says all the saints stood before the throne and the Lamb. And so that's what we find the saints doing. They're standing before God's throne of the Lamb, right? The altar, the tabernacle. This is the place where Jesus is. It also says, John says, that all the angels stood there around the throne as well. And so we have images of angels that you often find within the sanctuary. So you can see a couple angels on the doors of our tabernacle. And when we open them as well, there's also angels inside the tabernacle facing towards and honoring Jesus, who is contained within, bowing toward him who is the Lamb of God. The first reading also says that the saints have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. These saints were first cleansed at baptism, and so were we, because we're meant to become saints. Not only were we washed in baptism, but we're also made holy in the blood of the Lamb, as that reading says. We're made holy by Jesus' body and blood that we receive in Holy Communion. We receive the Eucharist at Mass. He comes and helps us with the grace that we need to become saints like all these witnesses that we see around us. As the second reading says, that we are God's children now. And when we reach heaven, we will be like Jesus and like all the saints. Transformed by our baptism and fed by the Eucharist, we are given the ability to follow their example. And as described by the Beatitudes in the Gospel, the saints are the ones who exemplified being poor in spirit, merciful, meek, peacemakers, clean of heart, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And so we also hope to rejoice and be glad with one another and with all those saints. For the Lord promises that our reward may be great in heaven.